Forget gurus. Forget anyone claiming to be an online business expert without going through the challenges of entrepreneurship themselves. The Real Money, Real Business podcast is here to prove the best insights in online business comes from your fellow online business builders. We dig into stories of entrepreneurs selling their business on the Empire Flippers marketplace so that you can learn how they made their business profitable, how they overcame obstacles, and what lessons they learned in their online journey. If you want to take your business and your knowledge to the next level, you've come to the right podcast. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, Lauren here with another great business to discuss on this episode of the Real Money, Real Business podcast. Today's guest is Daniel, and he's selling his Amazon KDP business on the Empire Flippers marketplace. So welcome to the show, Daniel. How are you doing today?
I'm quite well, and you?
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm really excited to have you on the show, and I can't wait to learn more about your business. But before we dive in, I'm going to go over a brief summary of the business. This is an Amazon KDP business created in May 2020 in the children and books niches. The average monthly revenue for the business is $29,858, and it makes an average of $15,734 per month in net profit. For everyone listening, you can visit empireflippers.com/marketplace and search for listing number 58743 to learn more about the business. Or you can unlock this listing to start your due diligence if you're interested in purchasing this asset. The assets included with the business are an Amazon KDP account with 53 books, as well as a bookmundo.de account. So now that we know more about the business, let's hear from the seller. Daniel, can you tell us a little bit about your background in building and running online businesses?
Well, first, before I was just an academic, I studied business with a focus on finance and taxation in Bachelor Master in Germany. And then I was 3 years a PhD student and quitted my PhD after those 3 years without graduating because I wanted to do my own business. And then I just started being freelancing like virtual assistant for FBA sellers and other stuff. And this was my background before I was starting with my KDP business.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. It's quite different from where you find yourself today. What drew you to the KDP business model?
It was quite funny. Before I was just a freelancer for other FBA sellers and so on. And then I found in a Facebook group about business, I found another guy and we talked a few months together. And at this moment, I saved a couple of bucks. And he asked me, since he knew the business quite well, if we want to collaborate. And so we started my account and built that up since May 2020.
Oh, fantastic. So why did you choose to create books centered around these particular topics?
So in general, we started with guidebooks and we're still having guidebooks in our portfolio. And the reason why we started with children books, this was just the development. We started with guidebooks and then we looked for other niches that are interesting. And then we just came up to some low content niches. And then at the end, we just slipped inside the children book niches and this worked for us quite well. And we thought it's nice to make children books. The customers are often nice. And so we just stood in that niche.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, you've definitely experienced a lot of success with the books that you've been writing. What are the reasons that you're selling the business now?
The reason is just because when you are for 2 years in one business, at one hand, you say maybe it's time for a change to something different. And the other point is just that when you're in Amazon and you make lots of niche researches, you find some other kind of categories of products that are interesting for you. And you just think it would be nice to try these in something like FBA also on. We just want to use the money that we can get from a sale to start another business in terms of FBA in selling other products.
Yeah, well, that sounds very exciting. You've got an adventure ahead of you by the sounds of it. You know, this was obviously your first KDP business, so I'm sure there was quite a steep learning curve. Was there anything you learned or any success stories that you would apply to the future businesses that you'll work on?
For me, the most important when you sell, I think, any products for us when we sell books is that the quality is the most important at the end. When you don't have quality, you might have short-term success when you're good in terms of marketing, but at the end, you will get bad reviews and your book will disappear. So for us, it was always super important to have a very high quality, and that starts with the content inside. That starts by the layout of the interior, by the cover and everything. And this was for us always a very important point.
Yeah, absolutely. Quality is vital. I'm sure there were some things that didn't quite go according to plan. If you had to go back and start this KDP business again, is there anything that you would do differently a second time around?
Different is, for example, first of all, it's not just what is the opportunity of a niche. So if there's high search volume, if there are good sellers, but it's important to see what kind of sellers are on a niche. For example, when you are in a niche where several sellers using fake techniques like fake reviews or other things, you might have the best book, but the advantage they have, and in that case, it's very difficult for yourself to show your good quality. And so we always tried after a few, I wouldn't say fails, but after a few books where we expected much more revenue and profit, we said that it's very important to go into niches where not such kind of people are inside.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you do in terms of marketing to make people aware of your books?
Well, obviously our books are on Amazon, and Amazon is the biggest search engine for people who want to buy some goods. And so obviously our marketing is strongly in Amazon. That means we are using PPC a lot. And these kind of people who try to make everything to make profit with PPC itself, we are people who think you need to use PPC to have a better ranking organically and then selling better. So we always see that our investments in PPC is on a good level.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great approach. So Daniel, if you were to keep the business, what are some of the ways that you would try and grow it further?
When I see now my books, and for some reasons I don't want to name my niches and brands by name, when I see my books and we're having, for example, built up a children books brand and some niches where there are lots of potential for sub-niches inside. And we already showed that some single books performed very well. And right now in my mind, at least 5 or 10 sub-niches of my current niches to make more books that have the same potential in terms of revenue and profit.
Yeah, it sounds like there's some great expansion opportunities there, as you say. So how much work do you do on this business per week? Can you walk me through how many hours per week you work and the sort of tasks that take up your time?
In this case, you must differentiate between two things. You must differentiate on the production of new books, and you must differentiate on the maintenance of the books you have. The maintenance of the books you have is limited to PPC, basically, because the books, they are selling already well, and you must just look that the impressions are stable level and other people can find your books, and most books have a good review average. And so the main point is that you're using, I would now say in hours, I would now say between 5 and 10 hours for the PPC optimization. And when you're now talking about the new books, when you're doing new books, that is very dependent on which kind of books. For example, we're having some low content books where I sit there for, let's say, 4 hours to research all the content. And I have some other books, for example, some storybooks for children, where I basically looking for an author and then the author makes the work. So this part is really flexible, and here's very difficult to say. It also depends on how many books you want to launch per week, per month or something. I always tried in a common time to launch, I would say, between 2 and 4 books per month. And when I launched 2 to 4 books a month, I would say for one book, maybe in average until it's done, let's say 4 hours per book. Maybe.
Okay, yeah.
It really depends on the kind of books. This is really difficult to say this is the number of hours I'm working on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, each book is unique. You mentioned briefly something about authors. Do you work with any freelancers or do you run the whole process yourself from start to finish?
So we are obviously having some authors, they are working for us, but they are not something like hired. They are basically all freelancers, yes. And it depends. We are having 1 or 2 freelancers we are using regularly. But when we are going to some new topics where we don't have now the fitting freelancers, we just go on platforms. In Germany, we have something this is called textbroker.de, for example, where you can just look for authors in the different kinds of area. And what is for us maybe a bit special is that next to the KDP business, we are running a KDP design agency. So we are having designers and they are just designing, by the way, the stuff for us when we are planning new books.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'm sure that comes in very handy. So for someone who's not familiar with the KDP business model or perhaps the topics that you write about, what skills or requirements would you say are needed to run this business successfully?
Yeah, so the first business, I mean, when you sell something, you should somehow like it or be interested in it or have an ability in it. So when you sell books, it's obviously useful when you like books, when you like to read books, when you have an idea how books should look like and what kind of books you can enjoy. When you're just saying, I don't care about books, I want just published, then it can be difficult. This is the one point, what is inevitable in my opinion. And another point is obviously that you should know some basics of how e-commerce is working. For example, that it's not always just about holding the advertising cost below, but you need really to invest in impressions before you can make any sales and so any money. So I would say the first is you must like books and you must have the ability to judge books somehow. The second is that you need to understand the basic principles of e-commerce. And of course, when you're interacting with other kind of people like authors, designers, and so on, obviously it's nice when you have some social skills to do the communication with those.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic advice. What would you say are the biggest risks with this business that a buyer should be aware of?
It's a business based on Amazon. And in Germany, we have a saying that means never build your house on the ground of somebody else. And obviously, you are dependent on Amazon. This is nothing new, I think. In FBA, in MBA, and in KDP, it's all the same. And that you must be aware that Amazon can change the rules, and then you must act according to the new rules. This is one big point, obviously. And obviously, the other thing is, but this is, I think, in all others the same, is this, that there is a probability that from time to time coming new competitors in your niche must compete with them. And I would say are the risks. What I think it's quite handy, especially compared to FBA, is that the money you need to run the business is not really high. When I see other people from FBA who are spending, I don't know, a few $10,000 or even $100,000 just to pay the manufacturer from China to produce 1,000 pieces of their products, I think KDP is much easier to handle.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Obviously, no one knows the ins and outs of this business better than you do. What support are you willing to offer buyers to help ease the transition?
I'm having no problem with having a few Skype calls after the transaction, and I'm not having any issues with something like a 30 days email support. That shouldn't be a problem, but I don't know what other wishes a buyer could have in terms of support.
Yeah, I think buyers will be very grateful for that support. It'll come in very handy. When it comes to negotiating the sale, would you be willing to negotiate something like an earnout?
No. No, since we are planning to go in FBA or other physical product games, there you need a higher investment first. And so it would be nice to have the money ready to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. You're looking for that capital at the end of the day. Would you be willing to commit to a non-compete agreement?
Sure, no problem.
Wonderful. So why do you think the Amazon KDP business model is a great starting point for those who are interested in entering the world of online business?
Obviously, the first point is the money. When you start an FBA business, so when I heard the first time about FBA, like, I don't know, when it was 5-7 years ago or something, they always said, yeah, you just need 1,000 euro in our case and you can start a business. But then this time, 1,000 euro was not realistic. And now I more often heard something like 30,000 euro. You need to start a business. And KDP is obviously, when you're just starting, the minimum what you need is, you need yourself. You can even write or whatever, get the content by yourself, and really price that you can start with a book that can sell well, can be, I don't know, between $200 and $500. And then you can start with a good product. And that is a very big difference. And obviously, it's easier to start on a marketplace such as Amazon when you compare that now, when you build up your own online shop, your own website, because you need to have traffic. And I think the traffic in Amazon is easier than it is for your own website.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So Daniel, that leads us to the final question of the interview, and probably the most important one, which is, if you had to put yourself into the shoes of a buyer, why do you think your business is a business worth buying?
So as I said before, for example, is when you see our products that we made, for example, in the children books niche, then you already see when you are having a bit around and you're using some tools as Helium-10 or other research tools for Amazon, that there are masses of niches that you can very easily go for with the brand we already made. Even when you see the books, you have so many sub-niches you can go through. And since you see the content of the books, it's not really difficult to do similar books. Another point is that although we are having now a stronger focus on children books, we are having other books, something like guidebooks for different purposes. We have books, we have classical low content books. And so we don't have our revenues not so much fluctuating through the months. So obviously, for example, in January, demand for children books is not as high as in December, obviously, because their presents are bought. But on the other hand, we are having now, for example, our guidebooks or books in other niches that are compensating that for in some extent. And so we reached a good diversification through guidebooks, through common low content books, let's say, and children books.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like there's a lot of compelling reasons why this should be an attractive business. It sounds very steady, which is a great selling point. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners that I might have missed?
No, I don't know. But I think for the listeners, the big difference is that our business is not in the US market, it's in the German market. I don't know if you said this in any moment at this talk.
Yeah, that's an important point.
Yeah, and so it's just something different. But I think especially for people from the US, it can be more interesting. Of course, you have the language barrier, but on the other hand, for example, when we tried one time to publish a book in the US market, and what we saw is that the competition, especially in bidding in the PPC, is so high already. I mean, in Germany, you can get click prices of important keywords for like 20 cents. I don't know, in US, Amazon always proposes me something like $1 or something. And so especially, I think a good start for some experienced people from the US in a foreign language market.
Yeah, certainly. Well, thanks so much for your time, Daniel. It's been really great talking to you and learning more about this business.
Thank you too. Have a nice day.
Thank you. You too. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. To learn more and see if this listing has already been sold, head over to empireflippers.com/marketplace and search for listing number 58743. If you're watching this on YouTube, click the link in the description to go straight to the listing. Once you've unlocked this listing, you'll be given everything you need to know about this business. So until next time, enjoy your digital journey.